The other thing is, remember, we have 1,000 homicides a year, more or less, in the state of California. Only very few are the ones that will be sought after to get the death penalty. So we create essentially a hierarchy of victims. Now, it's supposed to be the worst of the worst, and in many of those cases, most people could look at those facts and say, this is awful, this really is the worst of the worst. And other ones maybe not so, but to those family members, that crime is the worst of the worst, and yet they're told, we're not going to spend those resources on your family. We're going to spend it for someone else's family. And what about the parents whose children have been murdered, whose perpetrator has never been found? Those people have not gotten justice. So yes, in some ways we come back to fairness, we come back to money, because when there's a finite amount of money and you have to make decisions, do we execute one person, or do we open up a cold case file in our county so we can close these homicides? Do we test the rape cases that are sitting on shelves all around the state? And I heard on the radio yesterday that in Los Angeles they're not going to do fingerprint testing because they don't have money. We just need to figure out how to give everyone justice.
In this struggle, regardless of your race, color, creed, education, socioeconomic status, or geographical locale, you can't turn a blind eye to the perils of society that can affect your children and you. Hear me well. I pray that none of your children will ever experience the living hell that I did. There are thousands of children who need your help that are being violated, affected, and cast to the wayside like worthless debris. It's never too late to save a child, regardless of how unapproachable, unreachable, unteachable, or how incorrigible he or she may appear to be. There's always a way to help. Remember, it's not up to the children to heal themselves. We adults must find the wherewithal to help them heal whatever it takes. The world doesn't need any more youths evolving into social nightmares that myself and others have become. It is my earnest hopes and prayers that all children in America and abroad will flourish in life and become educated, creative, spiritual, charitable to others, and to restore harmony and safety within society.
If we go back into the moral arena, we can talk about a lot of these issues. I mean, you brought up that we stand alone in the world. You cannot be a member of the European Union if you have the death penalty. You have Russia and Turkey abolishing the death penalty because they want to become a member of this economic group. You have every Eastern European country, when they would overthrow their totalitarian government, the first step the government would take would be to get rid of the death penalty because it was a sign and a symbol of totalitarian governments. Now, we shouldn't be take certain action because Europe does it or doesn't do it, but it does tell us where we stand. And maybe more importantly, what I've heard from people who work in the State Department, it compromises America's position abroad as a spokesperson for human rights. In Europe, this is a human rights issue.
I'm not going to beg them to spare my life, you know, and I'll try to keep my head up, a little bit of dignity, and I'll be buried out on Perrywood Hill.
When Mike is executed, the Oklahoma Department of Corrections will fill out his death certificate. They'll check a small box indicating how he died. From homicide. It's a fact that not many people we spoke with knew about.
Really? Really? So they actually admit that they killed someone?
Are you telling me that when they execute someone, they put on that he died of a homicide? They don't say the state execute him? Why?
It's not accidental, it's planned, there's a date and a time, and it's done by the hands of another human being. So by definition in state law, it is a homicide.
Do you see the irony in that?
Oh, there's some irony in that, yeah.
The thing is that we as humans, we tend to be forward-thinking persons. We look to the future. And so what you have at this point in time is you have Linda Carty, who is alive. She's caged. She's scared. And you have the opportunity to talk to her and hear her thoughts. and you can humanize her. What we tend to do, though, is we forget about the past. We forget about who the true victim here is. And it's not Linda Carty, it's Joanna. But because we look forward and we can see and touch and hear Linda, we tend to forget about the person who is gone. And that's who I try to always keep in mind when I'm prosecuting a case, even a death penalty case. I think Linda Carty is a very manipulative person, even while in prison, because she's very well spoken, she's very convincing, and you want to believe her. You don't want to believe that anyone could come up with a plan this ugly, because we want to think of people as being nice and good.
I have to make one remark. I do not humanize her, or I do not make an attempt to humanize her. She is simply a human being, period.
Can you imagine being innocent and knowing that you were going to be killed just because you were poor and you were black and somebody had to go down? And you're sitting in that cage and you know so much more accurately what the judicial system, what the legal system, what the government of this country is capable of than all those happy, smiling people walking around out there, all those comfortable white people, like, and the amount of, and then you have to die with that rage.
I want to conclude with a story. The story of Amy Beale. Many of you are familiar with her. And I'm doing this in lieu of evoking the growing body of literature on reshaping systems of justice around strategies of reparation rather than retribution. In 1993, when South Africa was on the cusp of its transition, Amy Beale was devoting a significant amount of her time as a foreign student to the work of rebuilding South Africa. Nelson Mandela had been freed in 1990, but he had not yet been elected president. On August 25th, 1993, Beale was driving several black friends to their home in Guguletu. Beale was a white student from Newport Beach, California, Fulbright student. A crowd shouting anti-white slogans confronted her, and some of them stoned and stabbed her to death. 4 of the men, and of course they were all black, participating in the attack were convicted of her murder and were sentenced to 18 years in prison. In 1997, Amy's mother and father, Peter and Linda Beale, were persuaded finally to support the amnesty petition the men presented to, 2 of the men presented to the all 4 presented to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. They apologized to the Beales and they were released from prison in 1998. But 2 of them, Easy Nofumela and Ntobeko Payne, wanted to meet the parents of the young woman they killed. They said they wanted to say more about their own sorrow for killing the Beale's daughter than had been possible during the Truth and Reconciliation hearings. I know, Nofumela says, he said, I know you lost a person you love. I want you to forgive me and take me as your child. The Beales had established the Amy Beale Foundation in the aftermath of their daughter's death. So they asked the 2 men, Nofumela and Paney to work at the Guguletu branch of the foundation. Nofumela became an instructor in an after-school sports program, and Paney became an administrator. In June 2002, a little more than a year ago, the two of them accompanied Linda Beale to New York, where they all spoke before the American Family Therapy Academy on reconciliation and restorative justice. In a Boston Globe interview, Linda Beale, when asked how she now feels about the men who killed her daughter, said, "I have a lot of love for them." After Peter Beale died in 2002, last year, she bought 2 plots of land for the two of them in memory of her husband, so that Nofumela and Paney can build their own homes. A few days after the September 11th attacks, the Beales had been asked to speak at a synagogue in Newport Beach. According to Peter Beale, and I'm ending with this quote, "We try to explain that sometimes it pays to shut up and listen to what other people have to say. To ask, why do these terrible things happen, instead of simply reacting?" Thank you.
What I really needed to be doing, that was contacting the kids and touching the people in the community. And what was so crazy was that I didn't get this from somebody that was on the streets. I didn't get this from my father or uncle. I got this from Stanley Tookie Williams, a brother that was locked up on death row. He inspired me to want to do something positive with my life and to go touch them kids and to really be in their face and not just send an autograph or act like I was going to show up, but really come to the place and show up and touch hands with the people. So I want to say to you, Governor, that Stanley Tookie Williams is not just a regular old guy. He's an inspirator. He inspires me, and I know I inspire millions. So if he's inspiring me and I inspire millions, you add that up. That's over 100 million people that's inspired by what he do.
They were digging a new foundation in Manhattan, and they discovered a slave cemetery there. May their souls rest easy now that lynching is frowned upon, and we've moved on to the electric chair. And I wonder who's going to be president, Tweedledum or Tweedledummer, and who's going to have the big blockbuster box office this summer. Maybe we could put up a wall between the houses and the highway, and then you could go your way and I could go my way.
So what I want everybody to do right now, I just want y'all to put 2 fingers in the air like this, and when I count to 3, say change gonna come. 1, 2, 3. Change gonna come. 1, 2, 3. Change gonna come. We love you, Stanley. Keep your head up, OG.